Hey friends, today is going to be a little bit of a different video, so a little bit of a disclaimer. This is all going to be replays or some games that I recorded a little bit ago, but I just didn't really know how I wanted to share them. And since I was trying to play a little bit earlier, and the games were not going super well, to be honest, I was not really having fun. And that's okay, that happens. And I also, as much as I would like to, I don't want to play purely tank. But, yeah. And I will also say that I will be chatting a little bit, just kind of reflecting on my past year and how things are currently going, and I guess some of the things that I kind of hope for the future. If this is something you don't really want to hear or not really your vibe, totally fine. There will be other videos, much like my other ones. It's just, this is what I would like to do this time. And for reference, this is not me trying to look for any pity or sympathy. This is just kind of me talking about my life-ish in hopes that maybe someone else has a similar experience and they can feel maybe some connection with that or some comfort. Because as much as these types of videos help others, they also help me a lot. In ways that I'm not really going to go into, or I might, who knows. It's never certain how the yap will go. But I have, as you can see, some pinned replays. And this one was actually my first and only Hazard game. He is pretty fun in my opinion, but again, I am not a tank player. I do not enjoy playing tank that much, and I personally don't really see that changing in the future, but I guess you never know. But I usually always go back to support, but it was fun nonetheless, and I am sorry for the scuffed gameplay because I know that I am just really not a good tank, and I haven't put a lot of time into tank since Overwatch 1. And I am also going to be spending some time typing as well, just for some extra kind of stuff. Plus, I personally really like the sound of this particular keyboard. And like I've mentioned before, I can't really use this one for gaming anymore because it gives me a lot of unnecessary pain. And I think that's something I should try to avoid. It's fine for typing, by the way. It's just gaming. It's not so good. So, this past year for me has been tough. However, I've also taken a lot of steps and strides that I didn't really think I could do. But I am quite proud of myself that I have been able to do these things. And in a way, it's almost kind of bittersweet, because I think sometimes when you're making changes in your life, sometimes there's a bit of grief that can come with that. And I'm not going to go too deep into that in particular, because I feel like that's a whole other can of worms that I don't really want to get into. And I also want to kind of be a little careful in the things that I say, because I absolutely do not want to trauma dump. I guess I am the kind of person that really favors like deep conversations and genuine connections. And in this day and age, I feel like it can be something a little hard to come by. And maybe I'm looking in the wrong places, or maybe I'm not really looking at all, but I feel like this can be a good start. And I will also say that I am definitely the kind of person that every new year that comes around, I'm always like, this is gonna be my year. And I feel like it's a reoccurring theme, not just for me, but for other people as well, is that it feels really good at the start, and then it kind of implodes on itself for a little bit, and then it's like, oh wow, that was hard, but I learned some stuff, and now I can move forward. And I think a lot of life is like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or sometimes even 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But as much as I wish life was as linear as some other things, that is just not the case for things. And I feel like it took me a long time to realize that, or I guess to accept it. But at least now I know. I also took a lot of leaps of faith this year, and I definitely didn't really do them completely blind. I did put a lot of thought into them before I did them. Probably a lot more thought than necessary, and to the point where I probably drove myself a little crazy, to be honest. And I think the more time you spend humming and hawing about certain things, the more it kind of delays the inevitable, or you kind of second guess yourself. And I know that if you feel something deep down, it's usually how things are. I mean, it's not always like 100%, but I think it's pretty darn close. And I think a lot of these leaps of faith wouldn't have been possible if I didn't change my mindset. I think sometimes the way we think about things can hold us back in a way. Like, some people may call them limiting beliefs. And it's okay to believe things, but sometimes they can hinder you a lot more than they actually help. But it's hard to know when those things are like that or not. But I knew something had to change. And I knew that a lot of how I thought about things and how I perceived things maybe wasn't the best. And I'm not super sure how to explain it, but I think sometimes your brain can get kind of stuck in a cycle of misery, for the lack of a better word or thought. But sometimes your brain can get stuck in things that are quote unquote comfortable, even though they're not inherently comfortable. It's more of a familiarity. And my brain is buffering a little bit, so please hold. I think I will stop that particular thought there, though, because I feel like I'm just gonna kind of go back on myself. And I think if something isn't really flowing in my head, then I just kind of lose it. But I did learn a lot about myself this year. I think maybe more than I ever have. And I think it's because this time I was actually willing to listen to myself and to actually just really sit there and think about am I doing things just to do them, or is there any kind of intention behind them? And I think with people my age or around my age, or maybe not even particularly my age, but I guess, in the same season of life, if you will. It's something along the lines of, I hate saying like purpose. I don't know why, but for some reason when it's like, well, I need to know like what my purpose is. And it's like, I'm sure in some point in my life I will feel differently about that. But I guess now it's more like, how can I function in this world and kind of like get the most out of it? And it's not necessarily like, what should I be doing, or what I necessarily want to do. I mean, those things are important, but I guess sometimes I do just get a little lost in the sauce, if you will. I probably spend a little too much time in my own head and in my own thoughts. I think I might entertain them a little too much. And even though I am talking quite a bit right now, I would say, depending on who I am with or what I'm doing, I don't necessarily talk that much or that honestly. But I'm trying to be a better communicator, and I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a liar, but I think there are definitely times where I just kind of leave things out, or I just don't bother. My fridge just kicked in. And I'm gonna pause that thought for a second, because this game, I loved this game. And actually, if you saw, there was actually 2 Hanaoka maps, and I would say they're both my favorite games that I've played. I don't want to say ever, but mostly just like recently, because realistically I can't remember every game I've ever played. But I loved both of these games for 2 very different reasons, and I don't really want to spoil it, so I hope that you can see why. Or even if you don't feel like watching and you just want to listen, I will probably kind of summarize it at the end anyways, because I feel like these next 2 games are worth being summarized. Okay. So, I think this is something that has kind of like increased a lot over the years, and like especially when the pandemic started. I'm just gonna pause for 1 second because my throat. I have not been super good at hydrating these days. I was doing really well with it for a while, but now I feel like I kind of just forget that I need to do it. So, over the years, I have probably spent more and more time alone. And particularly lately, it's probably the most time that I've ever spent alone. I probably spend 90% of my time alone. And that is partly by choice and also partly not. I think I have found a lot of joy and comfort in my alone time. And just being able to sit with myself and my thoughts. Because for a long time, sitting with my own thoughts and kind of being alone was kind of tough, to be honest. And it did take what feels like a really long time to kind of get to the point that I was okay with those things. And I was able to find kind of like what was the most important to me and what I wanted in my life and how I wanted to live my life. Because I think for a long time I just kind of thought like I'm just another cog in the machine, like it doesn't really matter what I do, I just need to do it. And I think that's kind of just almost a disrespect to like living life. I know not everyone has the same privileges or the same opportunities, but I think at least knowing what you want in some regards is important, because then you can take the steps to get there no matter where your starting point is. And I think I also kind of thought that like it was too late to do those things, or like why start now? What's the point? But as the, what is it, three days grace? It's not too late, it's never too late. I think it's that. I can't remember. Something along those lines though, or like same kind of genre. I did realize that I don't really like negativity or toxicity. Of course, everything's not always sunshine and rainbows, but I definitely favor realism over anything else. And I've always been a big believer in like, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say it. Because I think a lot of us are just hard on ourselves, like enough as it is, that saying things that people probably already know about themselves isn't really necessary. And when I say these things, like, obviously if someone's out of line, it's probably a good idea to communicate that, especially if it's someone in your life that you'd like to keep in your life. But I guess I think of it more like in the gaming realm. And it's not just specific to gaming, but I guess like when I think about like flaming your teammates or blaming your teammates and stuff like that, I feel like it's really unnecessary. And also kind of getting into or getting better at video games myself. Like obviously I'm not top 500, I'm not an esports pro, but I'm definitely a lot better than I used to be, and especially a lot better than I was like even like a month or two ago, because I was able to kind of just like calm down and slow down. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is like the more mental clarity you have, the easier it is to play the video game. And because then you can like kind of critically think of like what your next move is, and that doesn't mean that other emotions and feelings and frustrations don't come up, but I think being able to like feel those things and like still let things like maybe not super get to you. Because if there's anything that I learned, that if I feel like breaking my mouse, I probably should have taken a break way longer, or like way before I even got to that point. And I don't believe that flaming does anything constructive. I think if you can hopefully say to your teammate, and this is more in like a ranked setting, like, hey, I don't think this is really working, would you be willing to try this? And of course, even saying those things doesn't always help, or sometimes it just makes them more angry. But I think trash talking your teammates never helps. And I know for me that if you're going to flame me, I am probably going to play worse. And it's not intentional either. And I think that sometimes, in a way, sometimes flaming kind of works, because then people are like, oh, oops, I didn't realize that I wasn't really doing that. But I still think it's unnecessary. I think some people do know that they are playing bad, but I feel like sometimes mentioning that to people isn't going to magically make them play better. And I think sometimes at the end of the day, sometimes you just get diffed. And it's annoying and it sucks, but you are not an AI programmed just to play Overwatch or play whatever. And I kind of say that with like a laugh, because there have been some people who kind of joke that I am an AI that is programmed only to play Overwatch, which is like really funny to me, and is also kind of like true, because I definitely play a lot of Overwatch, and I've played a lot of Overwatch to the point where it was like, it could, if it was a full-time job, that's what I would be doing. Or I don't think I really explained that properly, but I basically played enough Overwatch that it could be a full-time job. That's the amount of hours that I would put into it. And I definitely don't play that much anymore, because I think it just wasn't really helping me personally, and I just had other things that I needed to be doing. And I was just kind of using Overwatch as an escape from that. And then now I try to just use it to have fun. And if it seems like I'm reading a script or something, I'm not really reading a script, but I do have notes. Excuse me. Because I tried to film this a few times, but I was having a hard time kind of keeping on track, or I kept like repeating myself, or I couldn't really remember what I said or what I didn't. And this just kind of helps me organize things, because the brain fog or whatever is going on is kind of peaking. Plus, it is a little late. I don't generally stay up past midnight a lot these days, because I wake up at like around 8 in the morning like clockwork, or usually a little earlier than that. And it also just doesn't matter what time I go to bed, I just wake up at 8. I think another thing I realized was that people pleasing was a lot more of a problem than I thought it was. I knew it was something I did, but I didn't realize how often I partook in that. And I kind of also realized that I am very much a social chameleon, despite usually being pretty shy and reserved. I seem to be able to mold my personality enough to a lot of the people around me, to the point where I thought I just didn't even have a personality. And when I tried to think about like the things that I liked or the things that I liked doing, I couldn't really think of it for some reason. I was just kind of like, I like Overwatch. That's all. That's it. End of story. And I'm kind of learning more about myself and what I want to put my time into and what I actually like, and that the things I like aren't necessarily bad just because other people don't like them. Overwatch, for example. And I was putting a lot of time and energy into people who didn't really value me. And it's not like they were being malicious or anything, but I think I had a bad habit of giving power to people who really didn't. I'm trying to think of a way to word this that doesn't sound terrible, because the more I think about it, the more it just sounds bad, at least in my eyes. Because I don't want to like downplay other people's feelings, because I know that some people could very much feel a certain way, and just because they don't really show that doesn't mean they don't feel it. But I do very much favor certain like connections and interactions, and I guess I was trying to force things that I shouldn't have been forcing. And I kind of lost my train of thought because someone was in the hallway, and I also know that my mic will absolutely pick that up. And I was also just kind of confused because it's like almost 1 a.m, and like usually people aren't really up around this time, at least not in the building that I live in. Or at least they're not walking up and down the hallways usually. But I'm just gonna summarize that game. It was an 18-minute Clash game, but I would say most of the gameplay was probably like 3 minutes worth of actual gameplay, because I seem to like make friends with people on the enemy team, though in this particular case it was both Mercies became friends, and then everyone just kind of came over, and then people just started being like really nice, and you would say hi and they would say hi back, and or you'd shoot them and they'd say hi, so then you'd feel bad and you wouldn't shoot them. And so we spent like a long time kind of just chilling on point and like kind of half fighting but then not really committing, and then we just sat on the point and like I think we all knew that like we couldn't stay in the game forever, like it had to end at some point, but no one really wanted to break the peace. And I also like specifically put that in chat. I'm like, someone has to break the peace and it's not me. And I specifically made friends with the enemy Ball and the enemy Genji. And at one point, we played a very short game of red light, green light, and I was the only one playing really. It was the Ball facilitating it, and I was playing it, and then the Ana killed me. There's always one person that kind of doesn't really want to do it, but at a certain point we decided that we would go back and forth and just fight over the last point, like the winning point. And I think we didn't quite do the final fight like as I think most people wanted, but everyone was still pretty nice about it, and everyone had a lot of fun, and everyone was really like sweet in the chat and stuff. Yeah, and it was really cute, and I really liked it. And it was probably like the longest Clash game that I've ever played that really didn't involve a lot of gameplay. And this next one is another Clash, but this was probably one of the best games that I've played in a while, because it was like very kind of back and forth. It didn't feel like the stomp or be stomped. Everyone was like genuinely really happy with how the game was going, and everyone was really happy to say like good game, and a lot of people thought like they accidentally queued comp or whatever, because like I wouldn't say it was like super sweaty, but it was like a challenging game, but it was really fun. And I think, well, I can't remember exactly the time, but it felt like we fought over this first point for like 5 minutes. It probably wasn't 5 minutes, but it was really long. And then like every time we thought someone was going to secure a point, like either team, it just kind of kept going. Or like someone would come back and touch. And I would say like actually like our team was pretty good, and their team was also pretty good, obviously. Their Genji was really good. He definitely knew how to play Genji, because he very much could combo me, I think. I mean, I could be wrong, but he definitely scared me more than the other DPS. And I also really appreciate this, like my Mercy. She was very good at kind of like sticking with me, because I think she knew I was like the only one that was kind of like protecting her. Not saying that like my team didn't protect her, but we had a very kind of divey team, and Mercy against like a ball and a Genji can be pretty tough. But I think we did pretty good, and she also damage boosted me a lot. Probably because there wasn't really many people around for her to easily damage boost. And back to the previous point before I completely lost it, and I think it's also a good reason, not a good reason. I don't know why it's so hard for my brain to work. Well, it's probably because it's late and I'm a little tired, but having these notes is definitely very helpful, because I'm like, all right, I was talking about this. It did become pretty easy for me to just be who I thought people wanted me to be, and it just like never really occurred to me that like I wasn't really being myself, because I thought I was just, I don't know, good at being whatever, and I thought that was just like, what is that word? I thought it was like being dynamic, but I didn't realize it was just me kind of being fake. And I think a lot of me doing this was definitely like a way to kind of mitigate the potential like hate towards me, or just like general kind of like misunderstanding, because I feel like my life hasn't been particularly normal, and the way I kind of progressed in life, or the things that I have done and where I am now, isn't necessarily the norm. Not that that is particularly important, but I think it definitely confuses people a lot. And I also don't, I guess, give all of the information. I'm very vague a lot of the time, where it's like I feel like I'm getting my point across, but I tend to leave out certain things because I don't want to like give too much detail and stuff like that. And I prejudged myself a lot, and it kind of just gave me the illusion that like no one could be mean to me or like hurt my feelings if I did it for them, which I was very wrong about, and I was kind of just twisting the knife in the wound without realizing it. And I guess I also kind of learned that insecurity is, how do I put this? I guess I'm learning to I guess I also kind of learned to kind of embrace my insecurities, because I think when people try to kind of prod at those things, like they notice those and they try to play off of them or get in your head with them, but realistically, what can you tell me about me that I don't already know? And I think I used self-awareness as a way to bully myself, instead of kind of using it as like okay, what's next? Well, if I know this about myself, what can I do instead? Or how can I take better steps? And I think that's also like helped a lot. And I think just like not being mean to myself all the time, because that's just not necessary. I think it's good to be realistic and not be like over egotistical and stuff like that, but like there's a really big difference in being confident or in having like high self-esteem and being narcissistic and egotistical. And I think sometimes people will mistake certain, like being confident and like knowing your worth as like being a narcissist. And I don't really agree with that. I think that's kind of a weird thing, and I'm not really gonna go super into that because truthfully I don't really want to. But I think I kind of like reflected enough. I can reflect all day, every day. And I could literally go on forever, to be honest. I have a lot of thoughts. Well, we all have a lot of thoughts. I think every person has at least like 7,000 thoughts a day. I just tend to analyze mine a lot. I would say currently though, despite things always being different or not going as expected, things have definitely been a lot easier than other times. And I often forget, like, the more you do things, the more you try things, the easier they just get. Or the more, quote unquote, like, risks you take, the less riskier they actually feel. Of course, I'm not gonna do, like, anything crazy. Or I'm not gonna impulsively do something without kind of thinking about it. Because I think sometimes I would kind of panic about something, and I would feel like I needed to make a decision in that very moment, and then it would kind of put me in a weird spot. Sometimes just have like this urgency that I need to do things immediately. But despite how much people try to, I don't know, like promote like the hustle culture and productivity, it's important that, like, you know, if you want to think of humans as a machine, like a machine still needs to be serviced and cared for, or else it breaks down, or it doesn't work, or it malfunctions. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but it's just something that I constantly try to remind myself. And that is, confidence is not a skill, or no, confidence is a skill, not a personality trait. I kind of thought I was like doomed because I am like a shy and soft-spoken person. And I think sometimes when you are like that, people assume that you really lack confidence. And I feel like that's not necessarily the case, even though that was the case for me. But I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to be confident. And I would say that I'm not exactly super confident now, but I'm definitely a lot more confident than I used to be. and thinking of it as a skill, it's like, well, then I just kind of, it's almost like a muscle. I just need to keep working it. I need to do more reps. And as I kind of think about these things, like currently, I feel like I also just talked about them as I was reflecting without like realizing it. But I do know that I am allowing myself to kind of just do things, because I think I stopped myself because I thought I wasn't good enough, or that I wouldn't like make an impact, or that it just wouldn't work. But the reality of it is that you don't know unless you try. This was a silly, goofy game. I like this one. Rome was not built in a day, though. And progress is still progress, no matter how little. And mistakes do not mean failure. And I feel like perfection is a bit of like an illusion and almost an excuse to like not do things. Because I know there's some people in my life, and it's myself included, that like if I wasn't immediately good at something, or I was like really bad at it, or it was taking me a long time to kind of figure things out, then I was like, well, what's the point? Because I'm sure there's someone else who can just do it better. And that could very well be the case, but at the same time, I don't think that's something that should stop you. Like, because there's always going to be someone better, but there's always going to be someone worse. And we all are unique in our own ways. And even if someone is doing the same thing as us, we still bring our own uniqueness to it. And I feel like every time I start a new thought, I just say "and." I guess I always thought that I wanted specifically comfort, but it was actually peace that I wanted. And the discomfort of stagnation and the discomfort of change, to me, feel like two sides of the same coin. Kind of just like pick your poison, because I feel like they can be quite similar, or at least they can feel kind of the same in a way. And I hope this doesn't come off super preachy. this is just some things I try to remind myself. Because I'm hoping that if I tell myself these things enough, I will hopefully remember them. I will say that there could be a very big chance that I just record all the audio over again. Like I might get a little nervous. But I feel it's nice to just kind of chat. And I'm just also gonna focus a little on, I guess, like fabric sounds. My hands kind of hurt, so I don't think I really want to type much longer. And I'm wearing my compression gloves, so in this game, everyone was pretty goofy, silly, and I was playing with a stack, not quite a full stack, but the clumsy mumsy was pretty funny. They fell off the map a lot. And our Ryan, I think, was also a goofy little guy. I've gone through a lot of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I did have my little hope for the future thing that I will, it's not a lot, so I'll just briefly touch on it. I do hope that in the future I can live a little more freely and authentically. I am definitely the kind of person who is just afraid to be perceived. And it is 1,000 times easier to be perceived online than it is in person, because I can control a lot more on the internet than I can in person. But I also tend to be a lot more honest and real on the internet, so that's interesting. I also hope that this can open some doors for other people, or even if it's just noise, I guess that's fine too. I just wish for things to be more honest. I feel like a lot of things in life are very surface level, and I used to say this a lot, that I'm very much not a half-assed kind of person. I'm like all in or I'm all out. And I feel like it's not something I can, well, I don't want to say it's not something I can change, but I feel like it's just a part of who I am. And a part of how my brain works. I do hope that I can allow myself to dream a little more and maybe set more goals that I kind of thought were like off limit. Though I would say, as cheesy it might sound, like the sky is the limit. But I've also been a believer if there's a will, then there's a way. And if you want something bad enough, you can get it. At least that's what I like to believe. I think if you can put the work in and be authentic, I know I have said authentic so many times, but I think it's really important. And I also keep saying I hope, but I'm not really sure what else to say. But I hope that showing up this way encourages others to do the same. And I think I was gonna do like one more, but I'm feeling quite tired at this point. I have talked a lot, and we will see if I actually post it or if I keep it for myself, or if I just decide to redo the whole mic audio. I mean, editing will prove enough. I did have another recording of a game that was similar to the Hanaoka map where everyone was really nice, but it was on Nepal, and it was kind of a similar, well, I guess maybe not as similar, but I feel like their team the enemy team kind of gave up because they're like, oh, our doom is throwing or something. I can't really remember, but we ended up like kind of chilling off point. And then the second point, like, I was kind of confused as to what was happening, because I was shooting Torbjorn and he was just kind of running, and he just kept going, and I was like, oh, where's he going? There was a whole bunch of people that were just like congregating on the side of the map. And then we all emoted a bunch on second point. And their Doomfist switched to Ramatra and he gave me head pats. So that was very nice. And I was playing Sojourn, because I recently got the barista skin because I think that was a Twitch drop. And so I was really stoked about that because I think it's really good Sojourn skin. And I also think they do Sojourn really dirty with a lot of her skins. I don't personally believe she has many good ones. And I think she deserves better ones, as do a lot of characters. But I was wearing the barista skin, and then I had the croissant voice line. And I just kept asking the enemy Mercy if she wanted a croissant. And that made me really happy. And she eventually said yes. Anyways, I feel like I'm just yapping just to yap now. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you find comfort in this. And also thank you for listening. And stay safe.